Hey, everybody, welcome to the Hot and Hotter podcast. I'm Artie.
And I'm Dan.
Every episode, I give Dan a recipe and we find out if it's
A success,
or a disaster.
nevertheless, it's bound to be an adventure. Let's get to cooking. All right, my dude.
What is up?
Nothing much, man. What's up with you?
Nothing.
How was
That's
your
a
week?
weird. That's a weird way to say nothing.
Okay.
Wow.
Mm.
Nothing. It's a week,
Yeah,
it's going by.
your hair's coming in nicely.
It is. I gotta get a haircut.
But last time you did that, you ended up bald.
Yeah, I know, but I'm gonna have a professional do it this time. So just like clean it up.
At least it's still come out somewhat warm outside. If you were bald and it was cold, that would be miserable.
It's like the 70s here right now,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's
that's where we
nice.
are.
What about you, dude? How was your
Uh,
week?
it was all right. Busy, busy, busy. Had some family in town this weekend. Want to apologize to anyone that's rigorously following our schedule. This episode's coming out a little bit late because of some overbooking at our house, and we just weren't able to get the recording in. So it's all on me. But I'll get this turned around out and back to you guys as quickly as possible. But other than that, it was good. The trip was good. I enjoyed seeing the family, but it's just a lot of the wife's really busy with work, and
Mhm.
so we're juggling the kid and stuff like that.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
good. It's good. So
Well,
yes,
shall we continue with, what we made this week?
we can. Yeah. I believe we did pumpkin pie, kind of in the entering the fall season, where you decided to go with something a little bit more appropriate with this season, and I had never done a crust before, so doing pie in general, I was uh I was really looking forward to it because again, it's more baking and I'm really starting to enjoy that.
Okay, nice. Well, I do have a complaint about my crust.
Oh,
I
yeah,
screwed I screwed I screwed up my own math, and we'll talk about that later. But first, how about a little food history?
why do you gotta tease like that?
That's called production value.
Oh, okay, got it.
No, that's
All right,
that's not
well,
production value.
I'm
Um,
really intrigued now because I thought I did okay on the crust, and now
no, you
knowing,
probably did. I assume you did.
I mean, it wasn't bad. Okay, go ahead. History. I'm probably not even gonna listen. I'm just gonna be thinking about what did he mess up?
So, pumpkin pie actually goes back to, like, the 1600s with the Plymouth colony.
Okay.
Um, there's been some form of pumpkin dessert around since then. It just wasn't the pie as we know it now. They would back then really weird, which who knows, maybe it's delicious. They would stew pumpkins um in milk, honey, and spices, and they'd eat like that. So it's pretty much kind of similar.
Yeah.
Um, and then you fast forward like 20 years to like the 1650s, 1651, and a French chef comes out with a cookbook and puts in a pumpkin tart. So we're making progress towards what the pumpkin pie is.
Okay, and for me who doesn't know, what constitutes a tart? I know it's a pastry of some sort, but, like, what is a tart in if you were to describe it?
I would describe it as a kind of a crustless pie.
A crustless pie?
Yeah, yeah. They don't have it doesn't have like a crust along the edges.
Okay,
Usually has just like something on the bottom. But yeah, it's just very similar. They're very similar
okay,
desserts. So he does his tart thing, and then the kind of the first iteration of what would essentially become a pumpkin pie comes out in like the 1670s, and it's actually called a pumpkin pie, and it's in an English cookbook.
okay.
And it's the recipe's similar to what we think of a pumpkin pie now. Um, it's got spices, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves. They have apples or raisins or currants in it too. So it's getting there. And then finally, we get to 1796, and that's when a cookbook comes out called American Cookery by an American, and it was by an American orphan, Amelia Simmons. That's how they describe it. It's a weird way to
Okay.
describe
Mm,
an author of
I
a
mean,
cookbook.
I guess you gotta clarify if it's an American cookbook and it's not by an American, I guess it makes it un-American?
Well, but it's by an American orphan on
Oh,
top of that.
double
So,
down, okay.
right? I was like, okay, cool description. Um, so in this cookbook, um, there's something that they call Simmons pumpkin puddings. So it's a pumpkin pudding, which is essentially what a pumpkin pie is.
Yes. Yeah, I could see that.
It's kind of a custard because the eggs,
Yeah,
um, and that's baked in the crust, and that's kind of the actual origination of the American pumpkin pie. So,
interesting. When you mention, like, the apples and raisins and stuff,
hmm
because this is, like you said, a custard,
hmm
and anytime I've had pumpkin pie, it's just been that custard. It's just that uniform texture.
hmm
The only thing that's different is the crust.
yeah,
If you had apples or raisins, would those be pureed as well, like the pumpkin, or would they be like chunks?
it just says that there are apples and raisins and things like that in it. So I don't think at that time there were eggs in it. It was like
Ah,
pureed pumpkin and milk and all that
okay.
stuff put together. Um, yeah, that's all the information that I could
That's
find on a recipe from the 1600s.
that's interesting because like I said, I always equate this with like a smooth texture. It's
Yeah, yeah,
a custard, and to have something that would give it, I guess, chunks, so to say, seems kind of,
yeah,
I don't know, not to turn my brain off to it, but it doesn't sound appealing.
yeah. It doesn't either. I need to figure out. I am wrong about what a tart is.
Well, I mean,
Well, know
you
it.
sold me on it.
I think I'm gonna add a tart to our list so I can figure out what a
Dang it.
tart is.
Okay. Well, I always thought, like, when I hear the word tart, I think of like fruits
hmm Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
I
and
wonder
things like
what.
that, but I can't picture what one looks like in my head.
And now the tangent begins.
Here we go. Well, while you're looking that up, I want to kind of go over just the basic recipe here.
Yeah,
This is your recipe, right? Like, this is your, like, from your family, or did you create this, or
this
how'd
is
this
my
start?
recipe I made. The only thing I did change to it because I saw it on another recipe was the addition to the maple syrup because I thought that sounded really cool. But
Okay,
besides the maple syrup, yeah, this is the recipe I use to make my pumpkin pies. And it's
interesting.
mine. Well,
I never
it's mine, you know.
No, I get that, but I like the fact that you pulled this one out instead of just like an internet concoction.
hmm
So when you came up with, well, how old is this recipe to you? I guess.
A couple years old.
Okay, so is this something you do yearly?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, I have never made a pie, much less. I think the closest thing I've made to anything like this would be like a cobbler,
hmm
which you don't put the crust on the bottom.
Yeah,
You put the crust on the top,
yeah,
and it's way more forgiving. Um, Knowing that going into this recipe, the the filling is super easy. It
yeah,
is
yeah,
just incredibly easy. In
yeah,
fact, the first you have like 2 sentences, and
yeah.
then that's pretty much it, or
It's
1
literally
sentence.
throw the stuff in a bowl and mix it.
Exactly, and then
That's all it is.
you say set aside, but then you're putting this thing in the fridge for a couple
Yeah,
hours, and you
yeah,
so
yeah.
I would assume the filling needs to go in the fridge after you've
I mean,
Okay.
if you're not putting it directly into
Yeah.
the pie, then yes, you do.
Okay. I just want to make sure I don't know how bacteria works. Anyway, so yeah, so
Just
this recipe is pretty straightforward, 3 components. And to be honest, you we went above and beyond, but this is something you can throw together with some pre-made stuff at the grocery store. Super
yeah,
easy. You can get like one of those tins that already have the crust in it. You
yep,
can get the puree and basically you would make the filling and then you just get a
yep,
double cool whip. But
yep.
I enjoyed the fact that we did all 3 components all
Mhm,
by hand. I really did. So the 3 components was obviously the filling, the crust, and the whipped cream. Uh, your basic tools that you'll need. You have a stand mixer here. I didn't
mhm.
use one. I used was it immersion blender or whatever it is?
Yeah, I had I just used a big bowl and a hand whisk or like a
Okay.
power I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, yeah, a hand mixer.
Hand mixer, there it is.
But yeah, and then the other thing that's not technically on this list, but I know that you have in instructions would be a food processor.
Mhm.
And that comes in with the crust.
Yeah.
I was really intrigued with the crust. We'll get to that. And then a chilled mixing bowl for the whipped cream.
Mhm.
So for the ingredients for the pie filling, you need the puree, just 1 can, about 15 ounces,
Yeah.
5 egg yolks, so you got to separate your whites from your yolks, half a quarter cup of granulated sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, and then these are the different parts of it that I didn't really know what made it taste the way it does. Cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and cloves.
Mhm.
Those 4 seem to be, and I did a little research as well, and it seems like those 4 are pretty much consistent across the map on
Yeah.
any pumpkin pie.
That is, if you ever get the pumpkin pie spice,
Mhm.
that's what it is. It's just all those combined.
Okay.
Those that is your pumpkin pie spice, those 4 together. I
Okay.
just like using them by themselves because then you can adjust if you want more cinnamon, you want more nutmeg, you want more something.
Sure.
No one ever wants more clove. If you do, you're a psychopath.
I would know. I know they didn't smell the best out of those 4 options, so
Clove tastes like if burning could be burnt. I don't like it. I don't like clove. That's a
Alright.
terrible description of the flavor, of course, but I'm just
I
not a
don't
fan.
know, it was pretty dark. So,
That's
a
that's funny.
teaspoon each of cinnamon and ginger, half a teaspoon of nutmeg, and then an eighth of a teaspoon of ground cloves,
Mhm.
so as little as possible. 2/3 cup of sweetened condensed milk, 1/3 cup of heavy cream, 2 tablespoons of maple syrup, which you said you just added for this
Mhm.
recipe, and
Yeah.
then 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract.
Mhm.
I'll come back to that when we get to it. The crust. Now on this list, did you mean 1.5 sticks
I
of
did.
butter? Okay,
I
got it.
did.
Because you did put 6 ounces, and I surmised that that was basically 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 tablespoons of butter.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I screwed up on that.
No, it's fine. And then you also said, and I found this interesting because you asked for cold butter, and a lot of the times when we're baking, you want room temperature butter.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming that has to deal with when you're food processing later on.
It actually has to do with, even if you're not food processing, it has to do with the way the butter mixes or with the fat, the way the fat mixes with the flour. Um, if it was room temperature, you'd get a really wet, sticky dough, and you
Yeah.
don't want that for a pie crust. You
Okay.
want a very firm dough that's still malleable but not sticky. So
Okay.
that's
Cool.
why I use the cold butter.
Okay. Uh, third a third cup of ice water, and then you do have a tablespoon that you drizzle on first before the third of the cup is added. 2 cups
Mhm.
of all-purpose flour, and then whatever you need for working the dough on the surface. 2 teaspoons of granulated sugar, and you have optional here. What is that? Just less sweet?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that's it. It's just if you want a little bit of sweetness to it, put it in there. If you don't use it. You don't need
Okay.
to. It doesn't actually add it it doesn't add anything to the process of forming the dough. It's just a
Mhm.
flavor thing. That's it.
Okay. And then 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt, and then the whipped cream. And is this the same whipped cream we've done before? I know we've done a whipped cream
Mhm.
before. Okay.
Yeah.
1 cup of heavy whipping cream, vanilla bean, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a tablespoon of powdered sugar.
Yep.
So, pretty straightforward. The only thing that kind of threw me for a loop was the sweetened condensed milk.
Hmm.
What is that substance? That is the weirdest substance I've ever come in contact with.
So,
I feel like it's like what flubber would be if it was just not Hollywood dramatized.
so sweet condensed milk is just what it sounds like. It's
Okay.
it's milk that is sweetened with a lot of sugar,
Okay.
and then water is removed from it to thicken it.
Okay.
So and
So
that's through whatever process, boiling, whatever they use. But yeah, that's what it is.
it's just weird because when I think of milk and dairy, this isn't in the dairy cage. This isn't anywhere near it. This is on dry good aisles,
Hmm.
in canned aisles. And so
Yeah,
and then I had to fight with this stuff to get it out of the container and
yeah,
into
yeah.
the
It's thick.
yeah, yes.
If you want to, side note, if you want to make caramel very quickly,
Okay.
rip the wrapper off and boil it in the can, and it turns to caramel.
That's it?
That's it. You have caramel.
Okay. That sounds like some kind of like if I'm lost in the woods and I really want caramel, I can
how'd
I
you
can
how'd you survive in that forest? I had a can of sweetened condensed milk, a pot, and some water.
I
The
just made it
caloric
work.
density made me survive for the week.
I also came out of there with fewer teeth. All right. So I guess we'll just start with the filling since it's pretty easy. It has the most ingredients, but literally just dump it all in a bowl,
Yep,
mix it up, and then set it aside.
that's it.
That's pretty easy. And I would assume if you're getting the pre-made stuff, this is what you would pretty much have to do, and then throw it in the tin and go to
Yeah.
town.
Mhm.
And then I'm gonna go to the whipped cream because we'd already done that. 1 cup of heavy whipped cream, vanilla bean, vanilla extract, and then the confectioner sugar. That was really cool because I remember how like, you just whip, 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 and all of a sudden, boom, it turns into like a cloud almost.
Yeah.
It's just I really enjoy that sudden transition into a whipped cream, um, because for the first 2 minutes it just looks like runniness, and then
Yeah.
suddenly there's peaks, and it's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
And also, if you ever over whip your whipped cream and it starts to break, um, an easy fix to that is just pour some more heavy cream in until it smooths out.
Interesting. When you mean by break, what does that visually describe that?
Like it looks grainy or chunky.
Okay.
So it looks normally it's smooth.
Yeah.
If you over whip something, the fat separates. So it literally looks like it's breaking, but it looks like a liquid breaking.
Interesting. Okay.
So, but quick, easy fix is just pour some more heavy whipping cream into it, mix it until it becomes smooth again.
Good to know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then we'll get on to what I feel is the most intensive part of this dish, as if you do your own crust. Before we get into this specific path of how we did this, is this a general pie crust, or is this a like one of several different pie crusts? How does this equate into that world?
This is just a pie crust. It's this is like the ubiquitous pie crust. I
Okay.
mean, it's just dry flour, a fat, and water, and that's all you
Okay.
need. Um, the right amount of fat, but yeah, and it's delicious.
Yes, it is. So the way that I never done a pie crust before,
Hmm.
I found it very interesting how this related to other doughs and other things that we've done.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, I'll jump right in. So what we do is we put in let's see, you got the flour, you got the sugar, you've got the salt, and then you say drizzle in a teaspoon of ice water over the flour mixture. I'm assuming
Yeah.
this is temperature control?
No, it's just to get the flour ready. You really just give them a little bit of moisture um,
Okay.
before you throw in the butter.
I'm always amazed at how fine tuned you have to be with cold, hot. wet, dry
Mhm.
when you're dealing with these types of doughs? And no two are the same.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you want the dough to do in the end. That's what
Interesting.
it comes down to. So
Okay.
if if we were making a sticky dough, we it wouldn't be a pie crust.
Mhm.
But in that case, we would have put a lot more water in it, but it would have been sticky and wet in a wet dough. We don't want that because it's a pie crust. You want to hold its shape and you want it to cook quicker. So
Okay.
less liquid, a lot of fat, and the fat makes it flaky and delicious. And the water helps hold it all together.
Okay. Well, as we put it into the food processor with the blade attachment, pulse it a few times to combine. Then you said scatter half the butter in, which there was a lot of butter here.
Hmm. Hmm.
So half of that butter goes in, and I noticed it just kind of like pebbled up. Like
Yeah,
the butter
looks like
would
sand.
attract the powder, and then it would just kind of like chunky sand,
Yeah.
basically. And then in here, you say the butter cut into pieces no larger than a pea, and once it's been pulsed a couple times. And then you drizzle the rest of the water, the ice
Hmm.
water over it.
Yeah.
And then add the rest of the butter, and then you pulse it again. And this is where I kind of felt like I got off of what your description was. In your word, it says forms very small lumps about the size of peppercorn.
Yeah.
Would peppercorn be like a BB, bigger, smaller than a
Yeah.
BB?
Yeah. Yeah. Like a baby.
Okay. Then the dough should hold together and feel tacky when squeezed.
Hmm.
I think I did this right. I feel like mine wasn't. Mine was a little bit more fine than a peppercorn,
Hmm.
but it reminded me of that, like that kinetic sand.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you've ever messed with that,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's weird because it looks like it should just crumble apart, but then you squeeze it and it just sticks together.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
That
that's exactly what you should do.
Okay, perfect, because I don't deal with peppercorns too
Hmm.
often, and I don't, again, still learning these doughs, so that was really, it felt like that Play-Doh that doesn't it's hard to explain, it's that
Yeah.
kinetic sand
It
stuff.
it looks so it looks like sand, and you don't think it should stick together, but then when you
Yes,
just push it together, it just sticks together.
it's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you said, "Put this on a clean work surface and divide the dough into 2 piles." Um, I'm curious as to why you only use half the dough in this specific recipe. Do you always make this in mind of having crust for a later time?
No, it just makes so much that
Okay.
you don't really need them both. You can use them both, but you're just gonna trim a bunch off at the end
Mhm.
because when you're rolling the dough, which we'll get there, it's you roll it thin,
Yes.
so you only need like half the amount.
Okay.
But if you use it all, use it all. Whatever you want to do, you do.
No, I you say here, put it in the in the freezer if you wanna use it. You can leave it in there for, like, 3 months. Just make
Yeah.
sure you thaw it overnight if you wanna use it.
Hmm.
But yeah, put the made them into 2 discs, wrapped them, put them in the fridge for an hour, 1 in the freezer, 1 in the fridge for an hour, and then I brought it out about an hour and a half later and let it sit for about 10 minutes, and then I started rolling it. Now, I did go above and beyond with regards to tools. I went
Hmm.
out and got a pastry mat. Um
Okay.
which is like a silicone mat that you can
Hmm.
just set down. A couple people had recommended that because of how dealing with the thin nature of what a rolled out crust to be is can
Hmm.
um, that you know any way to keep it from being stickier to any other surface is the better. And they said the pastry mat was really nice because you can kind of like bend it back and manipulate the dough a little bit better,
Hmm.
and it worked beautifully. It worked beautifully. The only thing
Nice.
that was a little annoying was the mat itself was sliding on the counter, so I would put, like, a damp paper towel
Oh
under
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was great, and then it had, like, the little circles on it, so I knew
Hmm.
exactly how big. It says if you have a 9-inch crust, this is where you
Hmm.
wanna roll it out to, and it
Nice.
was perfect. It was
Cool.
perfect. Ease of mind for there. So if
Yeah.
you wanna do that, by all means, it's kinda nice. And then, yeah, so we roll it out. It does crack a little bit on the edge. I just kinda
Yeah.
squeeze those back together. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
all you do.
Because you say something about if it's cracking too easily, let it sit for a little bit longer, warm up, and then continue on with the rolling of the dough. But, it was I was surprised at how easy this was. I was expecting failure. I was expecting to mess up, but,
Yeah.
this just came along real nice. The little pastry mat was nice. I got it up to about the 9-inch circle, and it was about an 1/8 inch thick. It seemed
Mhm.
like it was nice and even. It was a little tricky trying to get it onto the rolling pin because 'cause I've never done it before.
Yeah.
Practice would make perfect there.
Mhm.
And then came to putting it in the pan. Now you say, the pan doesn't need to be, what'd you say, deep? What was it?
Nope, it's a
Uh,
shallow pipe pan.
okay. I don't I'd only saw one size at the grocery store, and I went ahead and got a glass one because we didn't have
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
So I got a glass one and it seemed to work fine. I put it in there. I kinda had to kind of finagle it, and I
Mhm.
would recommend being careful not to tear your crust. So lift up the crust on the edge and then push um, into the crevices around the
Yeah.
perimeter of the pan
Yeah.
because you don't wanna, like, just stretch it out.
No.
You it makes sense that you got it this one thickness all the way through. You don't wanna jeopardize that. So,
Yeah.
you kinda have to be gentle. Don't just mash, mash, mash. You kinda have to, if you're gonna push in on this side, kinda give a little bit on the other side and just kinda help ease it into its spot. And then came the really weird part where you had to put a weight in it. I thought this was so weird. I went out and bought 2 pounds of pinto beans
There you go.
and or dried beans of some sort
Mhm.
and parchment paper in there. Again, be careful. Um, I did the triangle fold thing, made the circle a little bit bigger, folded
Yeah.
up the walls a little bit, and then just dumped the beans in there and tried to fill in any crevices so that it wouldn't, have any pockets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I quote unquote blind baked my crust.
Yeah. You
What
did it.
is the purpose of this fake bake part?
Well, it's not fake bake, you're baking the dough. It helps to keep the crust flaky and crusty. Um, so essentially when it bakes, it kind of the fat gets throughout the dough, gives it nice and flaky, kind of gives
Uh-huh.
it kind of protects it a bit when you put the wet ingredient in it and then bake that.
Okay.
So I mean, it's just that's the purpose of it. Just to ensure you have a flaky dough.
If you don't have these weights, and I
Mhm.
actually saw there's actual pastry weights or pie
Yeah.
weights. There's people
Yeah.
that make like ceramic balls and stuff that
Mhm.
you can put in here.
Yeah.
It's okay. You just opened up another weird door in the culinary world to me. W- I'm assuming this is to help keep its shape as it's
Yeah.
as
The
it's baking.
yes. The other option is you can take a fork and just stab a bunch of holes in the bottom, and that's supposed to help it. In my experience, it's more unsuccessful than it's successful doing that. I
Hmm,
find every time I use the beans, it just always works.
okay.
But yeah, if you don't want to go by beans, you can stab the bottom of your dough a bunch of times with the fork. So there's just a bunch of little holes at the bottom.
I've
Um,
seen that done before in tortillas. I've seen that done with tortillas. What does that do? Is that just like allow heat to kind of go through or
mhm, yeah.
okay, interesting. Well, I noticed that the edges after what was it, like 15 minutes was this
Mhm,
blind bake.
yeah.
It's is it just like a flash kind of like maybe getting it a little bit hardened and
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Because it was a
that's
little
the whole
golden,
purpose.
just a small amount of goldenness
Yeah.
on the around the edge.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot to mention, you'll have to show me your technique, but I
Mhm,
just took the excess hanging over when I first put the pie crust in there
mhm.
and folded it up and kinda pinched it down on the
Yes.
edge.
Yeah, so what you do is when you cut it, you leave an inch around from the edge of the pie cr of the the tin. There should
Okay,
be an inch of dough, and you pinch it on itself to where it goes inside the pie pan.
okay.
So you got, like, a nice thicker rim, and then you just go through and just oh, where's my camera? You just, like, literally finger, pinch, and you make that shape.
That's how you get that, okay.
Mhm.
Interesting. I didn't have as much as I mean, I made it work. I just
Mhm.
basically I just kind of balled up the edges. It seems
Yeah,
like it's
that's fine.
reinforcement. That's what that's what it's
I mean,
for.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay. It was fine. And then yeah, I took it out of the and then let it cool. Um,
Mhm.
and I'm assuming it's better to let it cool. You don't want to start cooking the stuff before, or like, I'm assuming.
So, I mean, you wanna let it cool just to let it cool, before you put in the filling because there's eggs and stuff in there. If you
Okay.
put that filling in a hot thing, which would be the dough would be hot, it would start cooking it,
Okay.
and you don't
That's
want
what I
that.
assumed. Okay. And then you once it's cool enough, you put the filling in. And I thought this was really weird because having never done it, I didn't anticipate the filling to be that runny before you cook it.
Mhm.
So I
No.
thought I had done it wrong.
No.
Um, because I was thinking more of like a pudding kind of consistency
Yeah.
as opposed to just I blooped just
Yeah,
poured
yeah,
this filling right in the middle
yeah,
and then put that in the oven and then I was another 60 minutes. Like
yeah.
this thing's been in there up to 75 minutes. That's a long time for a baked good in my opinion.
I mean, that's what it takes to make a real pie.
I just it's weird. We've baked breads and stuff and it's taken 30 minutes at most and now we're full
Well,
on
you gotta
hour.
think this is a you're baking a custard.
So it's more for the filling than it is the
Yeah,
crust.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the
Okay.
crust is done at that point.
And it
The
doesn't
this
burn?
It can, well, the edges can, but not inside the pan because the filling's in there.
Interesting.
So the filling kinda works with the crust, but the edges can burn, and a way to prevent that is you just take tinfoil and wrap the edges, and they won't burn.
Like a heat shield?
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting. That's such a weird it's there's no these are just awkward to get in and out of the oven, and then you put, like, a tinfoil ring on it. I don't know, it's just
I'm
so
pretty sure
anyway,
you I'm pretty sure you can actually buy actual, like, shields that you put on the top of the pie that goes around that crust.
it's like
I'm pretty sure you can.
it's like
But,
pie
yeah.
armor.
Yeah, pretty much. But, yeah, you can just armor up the edges so they don't burn.
I'm gonna have to check this out. Alright. Well, yeah, and then, hour later, I didn't go much past the hour mark. Mine was
Yeah.
already starting to get pretty golden.
Mhm.
I did see online there was, like, a shimmy test to it.
Yeah, the jiggle.
The jiggle, yeah.
Yeah, the jiggle.
Um, so apparently you want jiggles, not waves.
Yep.
So if it looks like what they said Jello looks like when you jiggle it,
Yeah.
and just in the middle, the edges will be a little bit more hard,
Yeah.
but the middle, you want it to be a jiggle as opposed to like waves. It's hard to
Yeah.
explain, but you'll know it when you see it.
Well, yeah, you just think of what if you were just to tap Jello, what it does. It literally just like just a little shake, just does a little something. That's what you want.
Yeah. If you see the arty shimmy, you're good.
Yeah, exactly. Yep, that thing's doing the shimmy. It's good.
So, and then in the last 15 minutes of the pie cooking, or baking, I did the whipped cream just so
Mhm.
it was ready to go, and it was good. It came together real nice. It tasted great.
Mhm.
This one's a little less sweet than what I guess I've come in contact with
Yes.
from
Mhm.
like store bought pies.
Yep.
Um,
Because every pie you've eaten has a lot of sugar in it.
well,
Like, a lot of sugar in it.
this one doesn't, and I liked it. It was a nice change of pace, and I think not that not that I could really tell, but I feel like the maple syrup was a good addition.
Yeah.
Um, I can see that being a little bit more of a flavorful sugar as
Mhm.
opposed to just straight granulated sugar.
Mhm.
And I think this pie was great. It was really good. I didn't know what to expect. Again, first pie. I do love pumpkin pie. I usually douse mine in whipped cream,
Mhm.
but this one was really good and pretty easy. I want to try
Yeah.
pie crusts again.
Yeah,
I
they're
want
not
to.
hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're intimidating, and then here's the thing: they're not hard until you piss them off, and then things can go to hell real quick. I can imagine. Um,
Well, pie crust is it's the easiest crust. It's 3 ingredients, and
okay.
as long as it's as long as you're not making it in, like, 80 plus degree temperatures, it's
Okay,
fine.
that
But
makes
when it
sense.
gets too hot, that makes the butter soften, and then you have problems. But as long as it's cool enough, you're fine. And I mean, rolling out dough takes 5 minutes. So
Yeah, this was quick.
so if you're rolling it for longer than that, you're doing something wrong.
Okay, cool.
So
Like, the entire time I'm working with the crust, like, this is way too easy. What is going on here? So mine was good. How was yours?
good, good. I did mess up, as I said before. Uh, on the recipe, I wrote a half a stick of butter, but I put 6 ounces. So at least that was right. But I just
Yeah.
looked at the half a stick of butter.
Oh, no.
So I just put half a stick of butter in mine. And it came out very hard. It wasn't flaky at all. The filling was delicious. They're just, a little crunch with the pie.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I mixed the the pie custard or the pumpkin custard up. No problem. Um, you got everyone will see it on the video. I made a mess with the whipped cream. I forget what it's called. I have the single hand mixer where it's
Yeah.
just I forget what it's called.
Immersion blender?
Immersion blender.
Yeah.
So I used that, not thinking on the lowest setting. I'm like, this would be fine, and it just goes bzz, tsh, just like stuff all over my cupboard. I'm just like, all right, cool. I'm not using this. That was a bad idea.
There's been several times in your footage throughout the recipes where I can see you get so frustrated with your kitchen. Just different fact like, there was once you were working on that stove top you have, and it
Oh
kept
yeah.
shifting down.
Yep. Yep. You think
Uh,
you think you think I would take the time to fix it? But I'm like,
nah,
whatever.
nah.
I don't care. So besides that, everything was smooth. Um, baked it up. It tastes good. Just a little
Mhm.
crunchy. The whipped cream was good. I like that whipped cream recipe.
Yeah,
And I like this pie because it's not sweet. Usually at Thanksgiving, this is usually when you have this pie, is a
mhm.
pumpkin pie. You have so much other stuff that's just so flavor intensive, but not because of the natural flavors, because of all the sugars and all the other stuff in it.
Yeah,
I like that this pie, you're tasting the ingredients in the pie. It tastes like pumpkin.
yeah,
The spices come through very nicely. The maple syrup comes through nicely. It's just a good flavorful pie, but flavorful in the right way.
mhm.
Flavorful from the ingredients, not from a crap ton of sugar.
I would completely agree, and I never thought about it until you said that. I thought about it that way, but you're right. This is almost compared to what I mean, even the other proteins like turkey and ham, like the salt and the just
Mhm.
the overabundance of flavor. This kind of can tone it down and be like a palate cleanser to an
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah.
I can see that. That's really interesting. And I never thought about it, but I don't crave like a fruit or a sweet thing when I'm done with that meal. Like this is why this has always been perfect.
Mhm.
That's cool. And you're right, this is not sweet. Even the whipped cream wasn't that sweet. You only
Yeah.
had 1 tablespoon of
Yeah.
powdered sugar.
And if you wanna add sugar, or you wanna make it sweet, you do it. It's not gonna make a difference in the
Yeah.
pie, um, the ingredients. It's just gonna make it sweeter,
Mhm.
but you're then in doing that, you're taking away the flavors of everything else. You're taking away the flavors of the pumpkin, you're taking away the flavors of the spices, you're taking away the flavors of the syrup that's in it. So, it's a balancing act, and
Sure.
excuse me. My when I made the recipe, my whole goal was I wanted to make like a healthier or better tasting pumpkin pie than the sugary stuff. That most pies, if you eat pumpkin pie and you get it from a store, it tastes like sugar. It just
Yeah.
does.
Super sweet.
And I want to make something that actually tasted like pumpkin pie. So
Okay. Well, I only have
yeah.
one more question.
Mhm.
Why the discs? Why did when you cut the dough up and you split it up and you put it in the fridge? Why do you have to put it in this disc?
I think it just makes it easier for rolling it out later. It's already in a
Okay.
round shape. It's already kind of compacted a little bit for you.
Okay.
So I think it just lends to rolling. Whereas if
Okay.
you had a ball of dough, You have to like push that down and then roll it out and just deal with that shape. Whereas the disc is just easier for rolling,
Makes sense.
or that's what I tell myself.
No, I mean, that makes perfect sense. I couldn't see any chemical reason or any
No.
like there wasn't any reaction going on that I could see happening.
Well,
It's
see,
just
see, Dan, the reason it's in a disc is because the ionized ions attract to the deionized ions, and then
it's subatomic.
it's yeah, exactly.
Got it. Got
It has to do with the quantum level of the molecules and how they interact.
it. All right, I get it. All right, you can do the whole like tell people where to find us.
Uh, yeah. So you can find our podcasts everywhere you listen to podcasts, the audio version. You can get the video podcast on YouTube at our channel, Haute and Hauter. We're in all the socials, Haute and Hauter, and Twitter, Instagram. Um, and we have a website where our recipes, and you can also find our podcast there too. And I need to update our recipes actually. So
Just thought of something for the to-do list, didn't you?
just put it on the thing.
And as we get into the holiday season at the time of this recording, please send in any recipes you if you hear anything that triggers something that you'd like to see us do, or you have any comments, please constructive, please share them with us. We would love to entertain any and all recipes from any of our listeners.
Yep,
Um,
100%.
and especially as we get into this very, very food heavy season ahead of us.
Yep.
So
Yep.
but,
It's
yeah, this was a good dish. I really enjoyed this. Again, I was more focused on the crust because the once I did the filling, I was like, "Oh, okay, whatever." So
if we ever get to a point where we have merch, I'm gonna somehow get a shirt that has to do with you being scared of dough.
I don't know, you might have to change it just to sweetened condensed milk. I don't know what that stuff was.
It's delicious. That's what it is.
Okay. It defies all levels of physics. I don't know what it was.
It's so it is literally just milk and water is removed from it through heating process, and then a crap ton of sugars added to it for the sweetness, but also that keeps its shelf life.
All right.
So
The
that's it. That's
words
all it
you
is.
say sound great, does not change my personal view of it.
You don't want to just get a nice big tub and
Nope.
fill that full of sweet condensed milk and
'Cause, like, water doesn't even touch it. It just, like it's, like, off a duck's back. The water just kinda runs right off. It's like, "Hey, you can't clean me up, sucker."
I'm too sweet.
Sure, that's it, whatever, it's weird. But that's all I got, bud.
All right, man. Well, keep on cooking, y'all. Bye.
See ya.